I have a friend who's a time addict. His story began on a summer night on the eve of the millennium. He was abducted by aliens, probed with xenometal needles in places he still doesn't care to discuss, and telepathically told he was surfing the outer lip of a black hole, and that there in that place time and space, physics and physiology mean nothing. When he was returned to Earth, he was frozen in a cryogenic chamber and kept in suspended animation for the next decade. Demons disguised as doctors devised maniacal new methods of dissection to use on his battered nervous system. They poked and prodded him and drew samples from his hybrid hemoglobin to see what made him tick. A decade later in winter, my friend died on an operating table in the ICU of UCSF Hospital. He was supposedly in his 20s, but you wouldn't know it by looking at him. He'd been dancing with the devil in the big ballroom of the starless void. The devil's eyes had my friend hypnotized in a trance. The devil's nails were dug so deep under my friend's skin he was bleeding all over the place. The flames from the smoke-stained fireplace in that big ballroom grew higher and higher, and the devil's little helpers laughed louder and louder, and the dancing duo spun faster and faster until the smoke-choked force of gravity holding them down became unshackled. And my friend's anatomy became nothing but a vast blur in the last frame of a decaying 35mm film cartridge.
Oh, yeah.
My friend was a bloody fucking mess, but somehow he didn't yet know it. That's another story altogether, but to make a long story short, he eventually got better and became a ghost. Somehow he managed to unhook himself from the ERIVs and machines that kept his heart beating. The man he became a boy again, and he learned the secret to living. The great pusher in the sky hit the big restart button and paused his life. Until then, he'd been measuring his life out in the grains of an hourglass, turning time into a commodity, just as the great pusher in the sky wants us to, pushing shadows like pills and dope balloons across the immeasurable weight of sundials beneath the immense weight of the sun. And the sun is a great big thing, but the sun is no bigger than a human heart. I now know that the most oppressive force in the universe isn't gravity, it's time. When my friend got out of the hospital bed, he wasn't in heaven. He walked out of the back door of the starless void. 2. Cupid's sharpest sniper. My friend woke up in Test Tube City. Little did he know Cupid had a sniper tracking his every move, aiming his weapon, looking down from a reflectionless window in the big skyscraper in the clouds through the green glow of a night scope. My friend was about to take a bullet right through the shriveled tissues of his atrophied heart. My friend saw an angel. She was crossing the street in the frantic insectile hum, hustle and bustle of a downtown lunch hour crosswalk. The angel's eyes, arched by the curve of sharp raven wing feathers, irises like redwood trees falling in the glass still crystalline waters of an ancient lake, blazed brighter than an atomic flash. In the colorless grays of the concrete and plastic surrounding them, the lifeless buildings towering around them, and in the pinched, worry-lined faces of the time slaves running blindly to their own graves began to slow down and glow in the angel's radiant gaze. The sniper pulled his trigger. The angel said, "Hi, I've been dying to meet you." My friend had been dying too, but it wasn't figurative speech. Something hit him in that moment like a freight train at full speed, and his heart ripped the air from his splattered lungs and blew his ribcage apart. Guts and bone chips sprayed every which way, all over the pavement, and unknowing drone worker beat people like a bloody ticker tape parade. It was then that every clock in Test Tube City stuttered and stopped. Windows shattered like they were hit by the EMP blast of an atomic bomb. The colors of the rainbow blasted space into nothingness, and time became as meaningless as flies orbiting an elephant. 3. Hands of the clock. I once saw an atomic clock. It was huge, a room-sized mainframe that made grandfather clocks look like flies orbiting an elephant in comparison. It's supposedly accurate up to 1/1,000,000th of a second. It made me wonder why humans are the only animals on the planet that put so much thought and effort into measuring the nature of reality. Time doesn't seem to discriminate against anyone or anything. Time is not fingers and toes forming on a fetus in the womb. Time is not the immeasurable ecstasy of NA-SNIN and death orgasm. Time is not Jimi Hendrix in a screaming ambulance ride, bending that first 13-second note in his dive bomb solo and machine gun past the edge of the sun. Time is not Burrose, storming the reality studio, cutting it up, shooting morphine and hibernating in a cocoon of chemicals for 1,000 years. Time is not Kurt Cobain, Jackson Pollock and his brains on the ceiling. Time is not Bukowski or Henry Miller on a bender. Time is not Angela Davis clenching her fist. Time is not Elliott Smith tearing a hole in his heart. with a jagged blade when it was breaking. Time is not Martin Luther King dreaming or John Lennon imagining that love can't exist in a world with colorblind, hateful people. Time is a rapidly rotting epitaph in the mausoleum of the void on the far side of the sun, filled with the fading bones of astronauts and the eye socket stares of all too gullible, clock hand chained slaves of time and the just plain damned. Like Santa Claus, Death's making a list and checking it twice, but he doesn't give a fuck about who's naughty or nice. This is not an exact science. Time can be measured using mathematics, but the yardstick used is different for each of us. Time is the revelation of infinity when you're 9, Ibis is the Buddha when you're 19. Too many candles on your cake at 53 and a severed limb at 93. The Stones were wrong. Time is not on my side. Time is a right-wing propaganda machine news magazine ripped for squares waiting at airports for jet planes with just one destination. Time is an unfaithful spouse in a forced marriage, a cheating asshole, and the cruelest bitch. And it is not a relationship of convenience. 4, breaking bones. Technology makes living convenient, but if strength builds character, as the saying goes, then convenience is a crutch for the broken hearts and broken bones that heal when we rise from a fall and help us to grow stronger as humans. I like old things because old things tell stories. Old things possess history. I like sun-bleached wooden rocking chairs, used clothing, the best, coolest stuff in my drawers and ground scores. Crooked old houses, skipping, scratched records, spinning on dusty Nickelodeons, Victorian fashion, black and white movies. These things are timeless, ageless. They tell stories. I choose to use bleeding pens, dog-eared dollar store notebooks, and rattling old typewriters rather than the sterile white picket-faced keys and screens of pharma technology to write with when I can, because I don't want to become a fucking machine, and it seems like society is tipping that way a little more every day. Our mortal coils disconnect from our bodies like snap pearl necklaces when we become ashes, but I like to think that our stories live on after us when we travel to the other side in the phantom fabric of the clothes we wore in life. The music we played, the poems we wrote and read, the stories and jokes we told, the memories of our smiles that keep us alive, and the ones who are left to live on after us. Thank you.